Energy when we come down there. They say all we know is to jump and wave. It's in every creed and race. And the carnival is the holy grail. Whoa, I feel like I stay right there, living the man's soul, yeah. I feel like I stay right there. Look how the man's away. Everybody charge up, we going higher.
All right, everybody. So thank you very much for staying with us this morning. We do appreciate it. So we are discussing a few things this morning. Of course, we are going to be discussing oil and gas and also the announcement yesterday. Well, yeah, it is an announcement. I'm sure, well, we know that it didn't come from, we didn't hear a minister mouth it, but the budget is on October 13. All right, so we do have a very special guest with us in studio this morning. Dr. Dax Driver has served as Chief Executive Officer of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago for the past 12 years, guiding its transition from the South Trinidad Chamber to a national body representing the country's energy interests. He joins us this morning on the Morning Edition to discuss the future of the energy sector and what to expect as the nation approaches the expected October 13 budget presentation. Dr. Driver, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And as I said to Dr. Driver a short while ago, Dr. Driver usually brings this level of sober conversation when it comes to oil and gas in Trinidad and Tobago, because I think that, and this is just personally my view, when we do speak about oil and gas, there is a level of anxiety when we do speak about oil and gas in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Dr. Driver, again, thank you very much for coming this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. So, Dr. Driver, if you'd allow me, let's begin this way. Of course, yesterday and late yesterday evening, we were informed that the budget is going to be presented on October 13. I see where the government this morning through its party, the UNC, is confirming that the budget is coming on October 13. And of course, every year from time immemorial, the budget is usually based on the foundation of oil and gas in Trinidad and Tobago. That has been our history. Now that the budget has been announced, or the budget is going to be announced on October 13, as it relates to energy in Trinidad and Tobago, what does the environment look like for us, the landscape look like for us?
Well, I think there's quite an interesting landscape that we have at the moment in the oil and gas industry in the country, and oil, gas, and the petrochemicals in Point Lisas. There has been a good amount of optimism in the upstream oil and gas industry. We've seen the re-entry to Trinidad of Exxon. This is big news. We saw CNOOC, a Chinese company, also bidding for acreage in the deep water. There's a lot of activity ongoing in Trinidad's upstream. So that is sort of all positive, and that's continuing. We're seeing those investments taking place. We need to see more of those, because the challenge is that the gas supply situation is in a difficult situation. We knew these years were going to be difficult, the next couple of years. So the gas supply situation for Point Lisas and Atlantic is challenging at the moment. I think that's just the reality of the situation. So the focus has to be continuing to get that upstream investment to increase our gas production, to make sure that the Point Lisas and Atlantic can continue and to provide this great value to the country as they have done over the last few decades, and to continue to do that.
So is it safe to say then that there is a level of buoyancy in the sector?
I think it's upstream. You're seeing that happening. So you're seeing the investment happening upstream. There's been quite a few changes over the last couple of years. BP sending some of its old acreage, and Woodside sending its only producing asset in Trinidad to Perenco. So this is then selling maturing, aging fields to a company who is very good at producing from old, mature fields at a low cost. So that's sort of quite a major change. And then obviously, as I was saying, that this deep water exploration continuing. There are a number of gas fields which exist in Trinidad's waters, which we hope can move to having an investment decision taken around them, because that's what you need. We need continued new final investment decisions being taken on new gas fields. The gas fields in the sort of traditional acreage closer to Trinidad's shallower waters are now usually going to all be small fields. So you need lots of them to be continuously being brought into production. We have the infrastructure there, so that it's easy to if you have a field, if you can make the economics work, to tie it into the existing infrastructure. Obviously, there's this demand for natural gas, which continues. So that sort of side is buoyant. I think where the struggle is in the petrochemical sector, where and in Atlantic, where we're continuing to cope with this low gas supply situation. 2027, that should improve when the Manatee Field, it's a major development from Shell. When that comes into production in 2027, we should see a turnaround there. But that one field will not change the country's fortunes entirely. We need continuous activity. The big field, which I think, if we saw an investment decision around it, would be, I think, very good news and sort of a bit of a game changer, would be the Calypso field. This is a large deep water gas field between Tobago and Barbados. So complicated, expensive to develop. If we could get a decision to have that field developed, I think that would give quite a lot of confidence that we could bring gas from deeper waters, because we are now exploring. So bigger fields are likely to come from deeper waters. The shallow waters, where we are still exploring and still developing, is going to be smaller fields. So you need lots of them to keep the production up.
Yeah, I want to look a little bit at our standing. Is it your view, or is it safe to say that Trinidad and Tobago still remains attractive and competitive by international investors?
Well, we've just seen two major international oil and gas companies, one in Exxon's case, re-entering Trinidad, and CNOOC, the Chinese national oil company, entering Trinidad. So yeah, I think that does show we are attractive. Obviously, people contrast us with Guyana and Suriname, which have these amazing resources, and so I think people do contrast us with those countries, but Trinidad remains an extremely attractive destination for investment in the oil and gas industry. We have a ready market for natural gas. That sets us apart from lots of places. So if a company comes and finds natural gas today, it has a market for it tomorrow. There's not many places in the world where you have that in the same way we have it in Trinidad. And we have a very, very strong, mature service industry. So if you talk to people in international oil and gas companies who are coming to Trinidad for the first time, what impresses them is the infrastructure that we have around the industry, all the support services, all the companies who are here, we're all been working for many decades in the industry, so huge levels of expertise, and crucially then the people who run the industry, Trinidadians who run the industry. That's something which I think makes Trinidad an attractive investment destination.
Yeah. Dr. Driver, I want you to speak a little bit to Dragon Gas and where you see Dragon Gas at this time, because I think that over the years, Trinidad and Tobago as a country has invested so much time and energy and so on into this project, and it is a project that has caused us great anxiety.
Yeah.
Even now it's causing us great anxiety. And yesterday I was reminded of an address that the former Prime Minister Rowley would have given, and he was speaking about how important this project is to Trinidad and Tobago, and was saying in his words that if it doesn't come to fruition, then our cuckoo is cooked, according to him. And I see that video was making the rounds on social media again yesterday. As you look at Dragon Gas today, what's your perspective?
Well, I think the first thing that's really important to do is everyone's sort of focusing on this one field,
right,
on the Dragon field. But I think we need to put that into a bigger perspective. So Trinidad and Tobago has this amazing, fantastic, well-developed infrastructure for processing natural gas. Taking natural gas, making it into LNG to sell to international markets, taking natural gas, making it into petrochemicals, methanol and ammonia, which are petrochemicals which there's a demand for in the world. They seem important as part of the energy transition. They are ammonia for fertilizers for feeding the world, but then also as a fuel, as a carrier for hydrogen, which is the whole other conversation, and methanol as this sort of very important petrochemical feedstock, and also potentially a low carbon fuel as well. So there's a lot of interest in those. So we have that infrastructure there. We're constrained by our natural gas production. We've been producing less than we have demand for natural gas in the country. So we have these facilities there which can be used. And then we're surrounded by Venezuela, which has huge natural gas resources, some of the biggest in the world, which they have not managed to monetize. So an obvious route to monetize Venezuela's natural gas resources is through the Trinidad infrastructure. So I think that we need to put this Dragon field into that context. And this is globally significant, this resource which we have of this processing infrastructure in Trinidad and this natural gas in the ground in surrounding areas in Venezuela. So I think part of Trinidad's future, an important part of Trinidad's future, will be as a location to process Venezuelan natural gas. The politics of it are difficult and have remained difficult for a long time. But I think that the opportunity that is there. There's international oil and gas companies who want to work with Trinidad on that opportunity, and I think we need to take advantage of that and find a way through this difficult situation, this political situation which exists, and with US and Venezuela and Trinidad relations, we have to just sort of find that pathway. And I do believe that the economics are so sort of compelling that in the end we will find a way through that. But there'll be many more bumps along the road as we go through that process.
Yeah.
But this news this week is good news. It's good news that there seems to be a special OFAC license coming to allow this first, the Dragon field, which I say is think of it as the first of many. Don't think of it as everything is just in this one field, but. There's other cross-border fields which are being worked on, and then there's a lot of other natural gas in Venezuela. I would highlight one really interesting opportunity which I think would be great to see sort of up the agenda and being discussed, because it's important not just for Trinidad but globally, which is there's a huge amount of natural gas in Venezuela from the oil fields onshore Venezuela, which is flared at the moment, just burned. So it's terrible for in terms of climate change, and it's as a resource, and then you have sitting some 50, 60 kilometers away, a big demand for natural gas in Trinidad. So there's the sort of opportunities I think we need to put Dragon into that bigger context of Trinidad's future, the world's energy future, and Venezuela's energy future as well.
Now, the impression has been given that if this project does not come to fruition, that it can be a make or break for Trinidad and Tobago. Is that your view? Do you share that view?
Well, I think that you're always presented as a country with a lot of opportunities.
Yes.
And what's important is that you need to have a sort of a portfolio of opportunities which you're going after. So if that option is not available to us, we have to find other things. I think that's just the way that any countries will face that. We face many risks globally. Pricing on oil and gas. I think that these are all risks which the country faces. So you need to have a balance of a wide-ranging portfolio, and that's where the diversification of the economy comes into play. So we need to do all of those things. Yeah.
You said earlier that you feel that both countries are going to find a way through this turbulent time here. So you made a point earlier that Venezuela has not been able to monetize these fields. And I want to put it in the context that why haven't they been able to monetize these fields, and why should Trinidad and Tobago be so attractive to Venezuela to make this arrangement work?
Well, if Venezuela, if any government of Venezuela had a magic wand, they would monetize the natural gas themselves in Venezuela and export the commodities. That's been very difficult for them to do because the investment climate in Venezuela has not been conducive to international capital moving to Venezuela to invest in the LNG trains and the methanol plants and the ammonia plants, like we did in Trinidad, starting in the 1970s, the first wave, and then the big wave in the 1990s into the early 2000s, which created this fantastic infrastructure which we have in the country, a world-class. Point Lisas is a world-class industrial estate, and I think just Venezuela was not able to do that. They wanted to do that. There's a lot of talk about developing LNG trains like Trinidad in Venezuela, just of course on the other side of the Gulf of Paria. They're now in a situation where they need they need resources as a country, and they have this natural gas available. And the world is moving on in terms of the energy transition as well. So people are sort of aware always that if I don't develop these resources in the next few decades, is there going to be a market for them after 2050? So I think that people will think, okay, we need to develop this natural gas. So Venezuela wants to still develop its domestic natural gas industry, but it's also aware, given the resources it has, that this is a route for it to quickly monetize some of those.
And I think what I was getting at is that Venezuela surely has bigger partners, such as Russia and India and large China, big countries. So in that context, why is Trinidad and Tobago so attractive? Is it because of location?
I think
greater ease?
No, I think Trinidad has been an attractive investment destination because we put the right basic policy framework in place. And as I was talking earlier, we developed skilled people, and Trinidad is just a destination where international capital feels confident to bring capital. Rule of law, people are not going to have things expropriated by the state, so that makes people more confident to bring capital to Trinidad.
Yeah. A view was expressed by the last administration that there was a need to speed up things, that the process in Trinidad and Tobago, it's just bogged down by maybe red tape and approvals and so on. And that's why we as a country have not been able to monetize certain things in Trinidad and Tobago. Is that your perspective too?
Yeah, I mean, so quite a big push around that came from some advocacy work which the Chamber had done.
Right.
We tracked out what the approval process was and how long it took, and what would you need to do to make that shorter, because the shorter the approval process you can make, keeping it as robust but making it just happen quicker means that you bring resources to market quicker. Now, Trinidad is not particularly bad around the world. I don't want to create an impression that we have a particular a huge problem here, but of course there are always things you can do faster. So speeding up that approval process, making sure that it's still robust, is one of the things you can do to bring more value to the resources that you have. So we've actually worked quite closely, the Chamber, last year with a small group inside the ministry. So we had a sort of team of volunteers from the Chamber, working with the Ministry of Energy on the 2020, on the bid round, which has just recently closed, to make sure that they had work processes in place to work things faster. So I think that is a big opportunity area for the country, and I think we need to continue to try to do things as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, because this has been also a concern, that a number of countries have been moving away from oil and gas, and have started gravitating towards more environmentally better products. In that environment, because I know that the former Prime Minister was making a case, I think he had attended some international conference and making a case for oil and gas still. Earlier when you were speaking about Venezuela, and speaking about monetizing the resources in Venezuela, you did mention the fact that they would want to do it because in a few decades they may not have the opportunity to do it. So is it because you would have said that you feel that oil and gas is still very attractive by certain countries and will be still attractive for a few more decades?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly with this energy transition, I think perhaps a decade ago people perhaps got very excited that there was going to be big decreases in global oil and gas consumption. I think that's been a bit tempered now, but as you've seen, the reality of trying to make this transition around this huge industry which fuels the entire world. But nevertheless, there is increased investment going in around the world into renewables. Solar electricity is something which is growing incredibly fast. There's a huge amount of investment going into there, and there's a continued demand for low carbon fuels. The politics of that shift and change, and obviously a different administration in the US has put a different emphasis there. But I think that nevertheless, around the world, there's still going to be this demand for people to decarbonize. Most companies, major oil and gas companies, have these targets in mind as they're making their investment decisions. But what we actually saw is there was actually sort of some underinvestment then going on in oil, and that has created some potential opportunities in the future, because you need to get that investment there to keep producing the energy which are growing global population and hopefully economically more prosperous. The countries who are growing fast, and they need energy to do that. And I think certainly from our perspective, that people who are sort of telling Trinidad to leave its oil and gas in the ground, we should go on producing ours. If the world wants to use less oil and gas, well, then that's something which consumer markets need to do. While there's a market, we should go on and try to make sure that our oil and gas meets that, and do it as efficiently and in a climate-friendly way as possible. But the world demands those products. So we should go on producing them.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that recent statements, and it would have been a few months ago, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar would have spoken about these gas resources or prospective gas resources in Grenada. What's the Chamber's position on that?
I mean, I think it's an exciting opportunity. There are potentially resources in Grenada. There was a find announced quite a long time ago now, and then sort of limited information since. So I think certainly the government of Trinidad should be working very closely with the government of Grenada to understand what resources are available, to see if we can help them get a company in who can drill those up and confirm those and turn them into reserves. And then Trinidad is obviously, the same way as they are with Grenada, a great potential market for Grenadian gas. I don't think Grenada as a country would probably want to, because it's a fantastic tourism product and it's great with its universities for American students and that sort of stuff. I don't think they probably want to build methanol and ammonia heavy industry in Grenada. But Trinidad then is obviously an obvious market for their natural gas, and I'm sure that if we think imaginatively about how those relationships could work as well, there's the electricity connection to Grenada. I mean, Grenada needs cheaper electricity. It's one of the constraints that they have. So they're looking for cheap, reliable electricity. There's no reason why you couldn't bring natural gas to Trinidad, put it into Trinidad power generation, and then export natural gas and then export electricity by undersea cable to Grenada. So there's the sort of relationships which you could develop. So I think that is an obvious opportunity, and Trinidad should be doing everything we can, as I think we are, to help Grenada develop those resources.
Yeah. Dr. Driver, as we come to the end of our discussion this morning, just a recap. So what should Trinidad and Tobago be doing to secure its future as it relates to oil and gas in Trinidad and Tobago?
I think that we just got to keep focusing on getting upstream investment into oil and natural gas. So there's some changes to the tax regime which we should be making to encourage that investment to Trinidad. She's saying making sure we're doing things efficiently and fast, and just make sure that we have everything there to attract as much investment as we possibly can into upstream oil and gas production, to increase our gas production. Then that then gives the assurance to point leases that they might be going through a difficult period at the moment, but there's a brighter future ahead, and they obviously track what's happening upstream, so they'll be tracking the upstream investments to understand what gas resources will be available to them. And so then I think if we do that, we can create a continued strong future for our very competitive excellent oil and gas industry that we have in the country.
Yeah. You still think that we do have the weight as it relates to the tax regime to maneuver a bit with that, with international companies in light of still or dwindling resources?
Yes, because if you create the right regime which encourages investment through the right capital allowances, for example, and you know, just the right way of taxing that, you actually increase production, you increase Trinidad government revenue from doing that. So our models show very clearly if you can make some changes to that tax regime, you actually very quickly increase Trinidad government revenue as oil and natural gas production increase.
Yeah, Dr. Driver, thank you very much this morning for taking the time to come and speak with us and to speak with our viewers, because as I said, I think that when we do speak about oil and gas in Trinidad and Tobago and energy, there is this level of anxiety, and I think it's always a benefit to speak with you as you continue to give us the entire and the whole perspective, and for that we are thankful this morning to you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Driver. All right, everybody, we are going to a very short break. We are coming back.
Buried in the savannah, from the hills in Gonzales, I could hear the panorama. You know where my waist is, behind a pretty girl. Familiar faces, make the sweetest bacchanal. Cause there's energy when we come down here. They say all we know is to jump and wave.